Seeing as how he's one of the most popular fictional characters of all time these days, dressing up as Spider-Man is relatively easy, if your name isn't Tom. Costumes designed with his likeness are sold just about everywhere. Be it simple Halloween costumes, those plastic helmet things you and your cousin would wear except you'd let him have the Iron Spider one because you want to be the real Spidey because your cousin sucks, printed and sewn Zentai suits, and of course the hyper-accurate movie replicas that cost $2,000 to even look in the general direction of. But let's go back to a time before all this fanfare and popularity, to a time when Spidey was still relatively new in the eye of pop culture, and his appearances in real life were severely limited. As a huge fan of the character, and a creator of a decent number of Spidey costumes myself, I give you the most niche and hobbyist video topic ever, a complete history of non-movie Spider-Man suits. Also, my friend Jacob is here.
Hi.
Keep in mind, by non-movie suits, we don't necessarily mean no costumes produced or used in movies, we just mean like the movies that came out in theaters. The ones everyone has seen already and made a billion cosplays of. No one cares about those delicious, shiny, puffy body stockings. We're going old school, with arguably the first Spider-Man suit ever. This one's a weird case because... would you believe it actually predates the comic character?
Is it that yellow one Steve may or may not have been inspired by?
Why yes, young Jacob. This is, well, Steve kind of ripped it off, and it took like everyone 55 years to notice. Allegedly. Or maybe Jack Kirby did. Allegedly. Or Stan Lee himself, I don't know. The true origin of Spider-Man's design is a little murky the more you research into it, much like the true origin of a lot of Stan's stories. The rumor has it, again, rumor, that Jack Kirby worked for the Ben Cooper Costume Company for a little while in the 50s. Then in the 60s was tapped to be the artist for Spider-Man. He got about 5 pages in, and then Stan changed his mind and asked Steve Ditko to draw it instead. Jack still got to do the cover of the first issue, though. The sketchy part is that the company behind this Spider-Man costume was only 10 miles away from Marvel's headquarters at the time. Maybe Kirby designed this thing during his supposed tenure with Ben Cooper. Maybe Steve Ditko saw it and it just subconsciously stuck with him. Or maybe it's just a big stupid coincidence.
Whatever the case, let's stop talking about it before someone sues Marvel or Disney or whatever.
After being asked about it in 2014, Steve Ditko just kind of said, "No, shut up, you have no proof," in so many words. I guess we'll never know for sure how this factors into the history, but I still think including this suit is worth it. Now on to official suits produced by Marvel. Here's a shitty Halloween costume from 1963, which was designed and distributed by Ben Cooper Costume Company. Huh. Would you believe this is the first piece of licensed merchandise by Marvel ever? Alleged. We can't ask the company itself because all of their records were destroyed in a fire in 1989, which happened all the time the pre-digital age, I guess.
They're still around though. Even though they were bought out by another company, the Ben Cooper name's still being used. You may have actually spotted some of their work in Spider-Man Homecoming. They've made the masks used in the scenes where Spider-Man encounters Ultimate Comics' The Ultimates.
This suit sucks, man. I know it was the 60s, but they didn't even try. Why are there webs on the blue parts? Why does he have his name on his neck like a dog collar in case the bad guys forgot? This thing's so off-model they had to draw his costume to look wrong in the ads just to confuse those poor children of the time who are now elderly. Now, we can't exactly cover every single Halloween costume ever produced, because there's like a billion bootlegs that were made in a time where it was a lot easier to infringe on copyright laws. So let's shift our focus towards Spidey threads that were officially commissioned and used by Marvel. Of which there's Hey, wait a minute. These look kinda familiar. The logos are the same placement, same shape, based on the early John Romita art, but the eyes on Japanese Spidey are squinty because joke, and Nicholas Hammond had this ugly drain cover thing on his face. But everything else from the neck down is... The Atari commercial one used the same one!
Vote.
This Spidey wants us to vote! My god, Jacob, it's all the same suit! It's the same suit, just the eyes are different! This whole time it's been staring us in the face with the eyes! Ah!
Don't jump ahead of the democratic process, Spider-Man. Take a look at this one first. It predates the 70s Spidey, and even the Electric Company one. Besides the poor craftsmanship, mouthful, and glue stains, it's pretty faithful to Steve Ditko's art. I especially like the addition of the web wings, and as far as I know, it's the only other official suit to have them until Marvel Studios temporarily got their hands back on Spidey. It was the first in-house Spider-Man costume made by Marvel. It was going to be used in the Thanksgiving parade of 64 or 65, but the actors ran off with their cash and didn't show up to use the suits since they were paid in advance.
It's been speculated that they got super drunk the night before the parade and just didn't even bother picking up the suits.
So they handed the thing off to Roy Thomas, the co-creator of Wolverine, and it appeared at costume parties, in comic book ads, and comic books themselves where he appeared in cameos wearing the thing. They even drew the webs to mimic the real-life counterpart. Speaking of which, goddamn, there are some really strange problems with how this one looks like it was made. Although holding together well enough for Roy to wear in these pictures, it looks like there's more glue in this thing than there are seams. It's got a mouth hole for whatever reason, and I guess no one had figured out how to make Peter's two-way mirrored lenses yet. The designer also seemed to take fashion advice from a gamma-irradiated nerd.
The pants are purple? Why? Also, I'm colorblind, so that's just confusing and I can't even tell.
This costume was in Roy Thomas's possession until 2017, when he gave it over to Silver and Bronze Age comic memorabilia collector John Cimino.
John Cimino is also the guy who discovered the yellow Spider-Man costume and brought that whole affair into the public eye. Yeah, remember that from earlier in the video? It's a callback. He was the one who mailed Steve Ditko. At one point in time, he owned the first 3 Spider-Man costumes ever created.
Roy and John later gave it away to a private collector after showcasing it at Big Apple Con in NYC. So we'll never fucking see this one again.
That belongs in a museum!
Man, it's probably just sitting on a mannequin in some rich nerd's basement somewhere. It should be at the Smithsonian next to the one from that terrible musical.
Shut up, you watched the whole thing with me on YouTube and we had a moment when it was over.
Don't tell them I liked it. I need to be the guy who hates everything. Anyway, the first Spider-Man suit created for use in TV was for a little show called The Electric... starring Morgan Freeman, I guess.
Spider-Man, where are you coming from, Spider-Man?
This, in my opinion, was the best on-screen Spider-Man costume until about 1981. This thing was Steve's Spider-Man brought to life. It was used on the show from 1974 to 1977 over the course of 29 episodes. It was probably made by the costume department of the show itself with guidelines from Marvel.
This was by far the easiest thing to research for in this whole video since it's the only thing with an actual Wikipedia page.
During his appearances on the show, he basically just hung out with Morgan Freeman. That was about it. The tables have turned. It's now Batman who's poached to Lucius Fox.
That's a deep cut.
If you want to know more about this incarnation of Spider-Man, check out this episode of Comic Tropes.
I was in a few episodes of that. Why doesn't he ask me to be Spider-Man anymore? Is it because I stopped wearing a cup to the recordings? After Electric Company's Spidey fell into obscurity, it was time for Spider-Man to make his big, small, screen debut. The 1977 TV movie, Spider-Man, starring Nicholas Hammond and his trademark bowl cut and his gun-toting clone.
That's right, Peter. I'm you, and you're me, and this is a gun.
This was the first suit that wasn't really based heavily on Steve Ditko's designs, but actually the second big Spidey artist, John Romita Sr. And you can tell by the large chest logo and the spaced out webs silk-screened onto the suit. I'd say it's a dead ringer for his art, save for the ugly, giant-ass web shooter and the whatever it is they did for the eyes. Someone should have been fired for this, good God. It was a quaint little movie, followed by a quaint little series with a quaint little costume. It has a horizontal zipper in the back that's really hard to see. It has some really clean webbing, and apparently no soles on the feet because Nicky Boy is having to wear some red rain boots when he's got to go outside. Out of all the Spidey suits I've seen, this one hits the best balance between looking good on screen, but also seeming like something that could realistically be made at home by an impoverished nerd with no social life.
I wonder why they decided he should have winged eyeliner.
The later episodes used a slightly better mask, but it's still distracting from how nice everything else on the suit is. While this series was running in the States, Toei, a Japanese movie and TV studio, acquired the rights to do their own show in 1978, which was batshit insane! You know, Spider-Man, mild-mannered nerd with no money and girl troubles? Fuck that! See this thing on his wrist? This is Spider-Man! This ain't no web shooter. He calls down his transforming leopard Megazord to fight giant monsters, bitch. He's spying on all the Asian girls. We stan.
He's an emissary from hell, Spider-Man!
Spider! Spring!
You might be thinking this looks a lot like Power Rangers, but that's because it is. This show inspired Super Sentai, which was then chopped up and re-edited with a bunch of goofy white teenagers to be Power Rangers. And upon closer inspection, he's wearing the same suit. The same seams, webs, and logos. The only different thing is the mask, which looks to have a white fabric or mesh in the eyes, as well as differently shaped webs. I can't tell if it's intentional, but the eyes are kind of uneven on the mask, so it looks like he's kind of doing like a face at you, like he's raising one eyebrow. What is that even? Other than that, it's all just little changes like the belt and web shooter. You'd think the similarity in the costume would be because they wanted some synergy between brands, right? At least that's what Jacob and I thought for a little while, until we noticed this same suit is in the 1981 Atari commercial.
Is this more action than even Spider-Man can handle?
Just with a better mask. And then again in this weird ad where Spider-Man yells at you for not registering to vote in 1992.
For registration forms or information on how to register, visit your local participating video store. Have a voice in your future. Register. And vote. And tell him Spider-Man sent you.
And in the canceled Canon Films Spider-Man movie that almost came out in 1985, which never saw the light of day because the movie studio imploded, Spider-Man's wedding, this comic cover, an event at Six Flags, standing next to Stan Lee 7 different times, or hell, every live event involving superhero costumes for like 15 years. It's all the same suit.
We love this particular commercial so much that we started calling it Voter Spidey.
So Jacob and I started asking some questions about it when we noticed the similarity. Who made it?
How many were there?
Why does the mask keep changing but everything else looks the same? I imagine that Marvel just had a broom closet with like 8 or 9 of them that they shipped around for events and license projects.
But after a night of investigating, we finally came across a name and some info. These costumes had been commissioned by a company named Eves Brooks. They used the same patterns every time, but they are the people who ordered the suits, altered the masks when it came to different Spideys with different needs. Some of them had these weird fucking shower drain looking things, sunglasses, squinty white spandex, and Asian white spandex.
Turns out, Eves Brooks hired a fella by the name of Jesse Guerra to create the pattern, which they mass-produced and sold to pretty much anyone who needed a Spider-Man costume. If you were working on an official Marvel licensed production or event, this is where you'd go to buy that suit for nearly 2 decades. Sure, other third-party costumes were probably sold, but you can think of this as the official seal of quality. These were the ones used for stuff like official character meets at malls and amusement parks. No matter what they ended up doing with the eyes, which colored fabric they used, or who was wearing it, this suit was always just so damn charming. I think outside of the cinematic costumes, this one has to be my favorite in all of its various forms.
For professional Spider-Man performers, this costume was the default look for many years. These real-life superheroes all worked with Marvel's personal appearance department, who negotiated, scheduled, and facilitated all the events where Spidey and other characters would be seen by the adoring public.
One such performer was a personal hero of ours by the name of Steven Vratos. Vratos was an aspiring actor in Boston University's theater program. He was ironically in classes with Marissa Tomei and even did stage performances with Michael Chiklis before winding up working in Serendipity 3, which is a restaurant in New York that tons of big-name celebrities frequented. One day, a coworker at the restaurant told him that he had a contact at Marvel that was looking for an actor to play Spider-Man at a Halloween parade coming up. This coworker noticed that Steven was both a trained performer and had the perfect body type for it, and got him connected with Marvel. Thus began his long career as a professional Spider-Man. He's been in advertisements, live shows, hospital visits to sick kids, and conventions, and hell, he even took the thing bungee jumping once.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Hey, these are great seats.
All right. Any last words?
Well, when I get to that point, I'll give you them. But right now, you might be dead long before then.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1, bungee!
All in this Eves Brooks classic suit. But like any good superhero costume, eventually the design had to change and evolve a little bit to keep up with the times. Sure, Spidey's suit is generally pretty timeless, but over the years the details have changed a lot. Bitches.
You didn't delete it from yesterday.
Yeah. I know.
So as it turns out, when that fuck-ass Todd ruined Spider-Man, they had to update the costume to stop small children from bullying the performers whose masks didn't look right by 1995.
Vratos was tired of the little Rugrats asking him why his eyes weren't big enough because all the current comics looked like this. Vratos notes that people were giving him guff about the eyes for about 5 years before any of the corporate suits opted for a change. And Vratos was lucky enough to be the first guy to test out and wear the next big section of this video.
So this is where updating Spider-Man costumes should have ended. Just don't change it, not even for the movies. This one's fucking perfect. Even when they reboot the movies, it should just be this one again. No stupid additional black lines or long pointy logos, just the classic suit ripped straight from the comics.
He's very passionate about it, you see. So this suit was meant to bridge the gap between the comic and live-action visions of Spidey, and I gotta agree, it's pretty badass. Vratos was selected to be the one lucky Spidey who got to go to the studio of New York opera costume designer Betty Williams. She was, according to Vratos, a veteran of her industry, and also kind of grouchy, but in like an endearing way. She designed the suit, built the very first one, and then had him strip down and put it on in front of her.
In the professional world, it's okay to see each other naked, don't worry about it.
Vratos noted that the eye mesh seemed different because he was having a harder time seeing, and later enough of his fellow Spider-Men complained that the suits went back to the original kind of mesh.
Steven also noted that the padding in the boots wasn't ideal, as it could allow the suit some hang time when jumping and could make the shoes float away from your feet and increase the possibility of fucking up your landing and rolling an ankle.
He said he'd prefer it if it had no padding at all, and I disagree with that only on the grounds that you could step on some broken glass at a convention because people keep cosplaying as RoboCop villains mid-death.
I mean, what do I even say about this one? Look at it, it's just Spider-Man. It's got the eyes, the logos, and an almost identical web pattern to the John Romita Sr. art. It's just the costume being used on the corner box art of the comics. I don't know, I guess it was just how John was drawing Spider-Man after like 1978.
Why'd you sign your name twice, John? You may remember seeing this one in such obscure bullshit as Easter egg clip on the X-Men DVD, the behind-the-scenes clip of the PS1 game, this cringy-ass training video where Spider-Man teaches a bunch of children he kidnapped how to punch a CGI Venom into the side of a moving bus, web shooter commercials, and Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk. Hey, I skated with that guy.
The one
And
we
also
know-
that one picture where Batman is like yelling at Spider-Man, but Stan Lee's like, no, children don't fight.
I'm just gonna put in that line. That was perfect. The one we know it from the best, though, is Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. Specifically the Marvel section of their Islands of Adventure, where he hangs out with a few other live-action superheroes. He walks around the park, says hi to children, takes pictures with fans, signs autographs, does cool poses, and he's even got a whole ride!
The ride features such memorable characters for the Sinister Syndicate lineup, such as Hobgoblin, Hydra Man, and Scream. You know, the most popular Spider-Man villains. Wait, there's only 5 of them? How much is a Syndicate?
That's not Hobgoblin's name. Also, Jacob goes to this park like once a week, so he's the expert on all this stuff, but in the script I'm saying it for some reason.
It's because I'm too lazy to write those parts in the script myself.
For this reason, we've officially dubbed this costume Universal Spider-Man. We also found in our research that there's a slightly modified version of it in this terrible Spider-Man musical called Spider-Man Rocks! That used to play at the Universal Studios in California. For some reason, California got all the weird defect versions of all the superhero costumes. As for the musical, it's just kind of weird. The songs aren't original, they're just covers, and the plot and imagery is really heavily derivative of the movie. The suit has these rubber grips on the hands so he can swing from a convenient rope that always comes down from the ceiling.
Speaking of musicals that are derivative of the movie and have covers of pre-existing music for the soundtrack, let's talk about the best thing in existence again.
You've heard all the memes. Some galaxy-brained son of a bitch decided Spider-Man needed a musical, okay. Then Bono wrote all the music. Then the Great Stuntmen Massacre of 2010 happened. It had a funny parody sketch on Mad.
I'm Julie Taymor. Bono and I turned Spider-Man into a Broadway musical.
Make it stop.
That was you? Nice going, Brainiac.
Hey, don't blame that mess on me.
And then everyone collectively forgot about it. It's very, let's say, unique. Somehow a lot of the aesthetic and some of the story choices remind me of the Amazing Spider-Man films, even though those hadn't even come out yet. Music was kinda catchy.
Shut up, it's all perfect.
Which brings us to the costume. It's got all the hallmarks of the Raimi suit. Big spiky logos, silver webs, pointy eyes on some of the masks.
Oh god, I'm seizing up!
There's 2 different kinds of masks for the show, with slightly different lenses. We assume the one with the bigger eyes was easier to perform in for the actor, much like the one from the Spider-Man Rocks musical. It has a faded edge that separates the red and blue with a Ben-Day dot texture. I like how the mask is a hood like the 80s cartoon.
The mask actually seems to be two different pieces, so the hood is like part of the actual suit, and then the face is more of a solid, sturdy fabric to kind of supplant a face shell. Or maybe there is a face shell in there or something, I don't know. There's a muscle suit underneath it for padding in case the actor smashes into something while flying around in the air like a true hero, and also to get that Spider-Man shape. It was designed by Aiko Ishioka, who passed away in 2012, meaning this production was one of the last things she worked on. We love you, Aiko. Thanks for helping keep this exciting character we love elegant and timeless.
Jacob even got a replica of this suit.
Julie, we have to close the show. It's too dangerous.
Are you kidding? That's the great thing about working with real superheroes. They're invulnerable.
I'm Green Arrow. I don't actually have any real powers.
Around the same time this show was running, Marvel made one more attempt at capturing the live stage for their media empire. That didn't really work out, lol. Marvel Universe Live is... exactly how it sounds.
It's the Marvel Universe, but live.
The Spider-Man costume here is a bit more traditional, but I couldn't help but notice it bears a striking resemblance to the Turn Off the Dark suit, even though it was designed by someone named Cynthia Nordstrom, who I emailed and she never replied back, so thanks, Cynthia! I guess for the time being, we won't know why these two suits are so similar, or why the back logo is just a recolored front logo at you. But maybe she'll get back to my email in 10 months. Is that all of them? I think that's all of them.
Don't you recognize me?
To me, you're just another nut in a spider suit. You're a dime a dozen in Hollywood.
No, we gotta talk about the shitty ones that we don't have nostalgia for.
Oh. Well, eventually they changed the Universal suit for some reason.
It's fucking bull. It's so bullshit. Fuck it. This suit is ass. Y'all like orange and gray? That's the color of this one. These logos have no character at all. It's just the generic ones you see on everything. Also, the eyes are like fucking stupid for no reason. They could just still be round. I don't understand. The seam work is really sloppy around the masks of these suits, so it ends up making the webs look horribly misshapen. Now, some of you might like this suit, and that's fine. This one just feels cheaper to me than the previous Universal Spider-Man costume.
MCU Spider-Man exists. Whoa. Ooh, whoops. So these Disney parks have a heavily derivative design of him. Even though, ironically, they used to just have the Andrew Garfield costume. Aw, they even changed the advertisements. They did him dirty. I wonder if they'll go back to using this one now? I don't know, this stuff is so complicated. It's weird seeing this Spider-Man standing next to the Avengers.
It's wrong. God didn't intend for this. But hey, that old one had the comic logo on the back. That's neat.
What you doing out here with all this ass? Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon. Hella ass. The sun is still out.
Can we get someone who can do some better poses up in here? Nope. Okay, alright. Well, this suit is actually designed by the same guy who made the movie version of MCU Spidey. I appreciate that they have bigger logos and don't use the silly black bands, but it has this big ugly gap on the shoulders now where the bands should have gone. What I really don't like is this mask that has a seam in the forehead that looks like a horn. But I think they fixed that later. Man, whether it's on a person or a mannequin, the big boots, silver eyes, and big head just make this one look like an alien.
As opposed to the times when he's supposed to look like an alien.
That's all the official ones I can think of. Eves Brooks / voter Spidey seems to be pretty firmly out of circulation.
But Universal Spidey is still making appearances here and there to this day. Even if it's not actually at Universal anymore.
The fuck is Drusilla's Park? Gold Coast Superhero Weekend? What are these?
We have no idea how or why or where this costume came from or how to get our hands on one. So if you have any information, please let us know so we can fucking steal it.
Appropriate social media links on screen. In the meantime, though, we've both decided to take one step towards paying respect to these two classics by getting our own replicas custom made by Zentai Zone. I got both masks for the Eves Brooks suit, and Jacob made the lenses for me.
And I'm the best looking Spider-Man in Universal Studios, Florida.
If we didn't live so far away from each other, then we could have a pretty cool photo shoot with these. Hold on. Away from each other. What?
That's just how you would actually talk.
We didn't live so far away from each other. We could do a pretty cool photo shoot with these. Which of these are your favorites?
Which one would you like to see more of?
Where can we get these two actual suits? Please help us. Someone must have one in a closet somewhere you don't want.
Did we miss any costumes worth talking about?
When will they release the Turn Off the Dark DVD?
When will the video end?
Actually, I'm not sure about... Who's the guy in the milk commercial? Just a quick reminder before you go that I post my videos a day early on Patreon and give exclusive behind-the-scenes content and patron-exclusive videos. Please consider becoming a patron, it really helps me out. If you want a more short-term way to support the channel, you can check out my merch in the links in the description. We have t-shirts, phone cases, posters, mugs, pillows, baby onesies, and so much more. See you next time. Hey, you guys know that obnoxious meme you've assuredly already typed in the comments by now? Well, guess what? Now you can buy it on a shirt. Isn't that cool? Go buy one right now, please.